right, welcome to this week's episode of Heroes of Han. And as you'll notice, our good friend Alex is back. Say hello, Alex.
Hello. Sorry I sound horrible. I'm sick.
And how was your vacation?
Hot. It was very, very hot.
All right.
Almost as hot as you.
And with us again, as always, is our lovely co-host Shawn. Say hello, Shawn.
Hello, Shawn.
Beautiful. Love it. All right, so a lot of big talk has been happening lately. I think probably the star of the show are jump points. So are you excited about jump points?
I think the premise of jump points is really cool.
Just in general?
Yeah.
What about what you've seen, I guess, recently revealed? Nothing was particularly shocking or new per se.
No. What I will say is I was surprised that they decided to remove the infrastructure surrounding the permanent jump gates. Because they basically went from, for lack of a better term, they went from looking like a space bridge, like an established route, to something that was just kind of found and then set up around it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I feel like this is more of a natural look and less people going, oh, this is Stargate.
Did you have any more comments on that?
No, I haven't read anything. This is all just off the seat of my pants. I've been out of the country for a week with like little to no internet.
No, I'm saying do you really think it copies quote unquote Stardate that closely?
No, but I don't know. Just the fact of having just the wormhole there, I feel like without the structure surrounding it gives it more of a natural feel to it.
Yeah, I kind of like it.
I personally am of the belief that, if it's a permanent installation that has been around for a while, it makes sense to me that they might try and build a ring around it or something to study it, I don't know. Maybe that's just me being particular. The idea of an interstellar gateway, or like what it should look like.
It seems like they would have had plenty of time to study it, at least in so far as the lore kind of covers, but I wonder if like the way that it resists, I guess anything that hasn't fired its little quantum laser at it, if that would also affect any kind of structure they tried to build around it or whatever.
Yeah, and that's a valid question. I don't know enough about, what they intend to do in terms of the lore and stuff.
The only acceptable structure is a small toll booth with a really long arm.
Well, they have, I don't know. So I guess they went through the mechanics a little bit about how, like, the steps you take to actually travel through the wormhole or through the jump point. And one of the aspects of it was that you will have to first request access to pass through it with ATC, which is fine. But they did mention the thing about, like, anything that gets in front of you can block you.
Yeah,
and
I don't.
Yeah, but also the way they're working around that is if you don't have your jump bubble formed, it will start to push you away.
Right. See, going back to the visuals for a second, if you look at my picture, when I think of a jump gate in the context of which they described it, this is what I think of.
So these kind of mechanically created or mechanically contained sort of things.
They don't necessarily have to be contained, but they're the idea of constructing some kind of containing force around it, even if it doesn't actually contain it, is more so an attempt, like signs of attempt at control, which I feel is more realistic in my opinion, just because, if you were, like, they may have had plenty of opportunities to study these phenomenon, right, according to whatever their lore team decides, but as far as I'm concerned, I would also think that they would want to control it as much as possible, because currently the way that they do it the way that they've shown that they want you to interact with the portal or the wormhole kind of feels more like, I guess, like Halo slip space or something. Like it's a thing that you interact with, but you don't really like. There's no other way to control it. It's like you're navigating a natural phenomenon, which I guess it makes sense. But then why did they go to the trouble of making a big portal in the first place? You know, I don't know. Like I get that the game vision changes over time. I'm not going to criticize them for that. It's just that the original gate that they did show was really freaking cool looking, in my opinion. So
Yeah, I mean, I see your point, but I kind of like the idea of it being more of a natural phenomenon because they talk about how they were discovered, discovered by accident, leaky quantum
right,
drive, blah blah blah. But like having it almost feels like a I don't know, like here in Texas we have like this place called the Blue Hole or Jacob's Well, which is just the place
yeah, I've heard of
it's
it.
basically a hole in the ground that water comes out of, but there's not like any kind of infrastructure directly around it. There's just maybe a walking path and that's it. And that's kind of how this feels is this thing was discovered by accident and it's, one of the permanent ones. And so the control that they have essentially is like this, putting a gas station near the exit for it, for lack of a better way of describing it. So, there's basic sort of support infrastructure before you go.
Oh yeah, it's like we got something
Right.
similar here, the Devil's Den.
No,
It's just
eh,
all that is a set of ladders going down. So there's a little bit there, but not like it's like, hey, look at this natural beauty. We're not messing with it.
yeah, and from a practical perspective, I agree with you. The only reason I bring this up is because it's like the sci-fi nerd part of me is like, wow, okay, that the jump gate with all the mechanical greebles looked really cool, and they shouldn't have shown it to me because now, you know,
Now you're
now
paying
that it's
for
not
it.
there, yeah, now that it's not there, I'm sad, but it's whatever.
The only reason why I could see maybe a structure being around it is if the structure itself triggers it to open. Like it doesn't stay open all the time.
Yeah, that's another possible explanation is that maybe for really well-traveled systems like Stanton to Pyro, or not Stanton to Pyro, sorry, Stanton to Terra, maybe it would make more sense for the gate to charge the portal instead of a ship doing it, but that's more speculative at that point.
Throw
So
this into our Discord real quick. Like this is what I think of something.
you don't make it very easy. Like show it to the
Hold on, I'm still learning this crap.
we all are.
It's basically the
Uh,
same thing. It's just
yeah, it's
it's a contained
Babylon
field.
5.
Yeah,
Showing my age.
but anyway, it visually it doesn't make too much of a difference. It's just a cosmetic thing.
yeah. I don't think at least I don't recall ever seeing the art, so I wasn't really didn't have really any room to be disappointed by it. I just think it looks cool in general.
Oh, dude,
And I
it
kind
wasn't
of
art. It was in game. That's why I was confused why they took it out.
or was that in the during the demo like the preview that they
Yeah,
had?
it was during the Pyro playtest, and then they had the demo of it working, and it was in-game footage, or at the very least, in-engine footage of the interstellar gate, and I was like, whoa, that looks cool. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
what if
mostly
that could have been there for technical reasons too? It's just if the artwork wasn't complete, there was an easy way to build an entity that kind of shows inside of it, like the circle, basically the hole itself needed some
right.
kind of object to contain it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a small visual change, and personally, it doesn't really. Well, small being relative, like ring versus no ring, but yeah, it's just something noteworthy that I felt was worth mentioning.
So, what do you
But
think
I
about
don't.
the system, the mechanics to actually get you through the gate itself, the jump point?
So I actually now you're putting me in a position where I'm going to talk about the idea that I had was I think the mechanics are cool, like having to manually navigate since it's more tricky than
Semi-manually navigate.
yeah, like semi-manual because you can't control your speed, but you have to control, your pitch yaw roll to keep yourself in the tunnel. It sounds like it'll be a fun little way to keep people engaged when they have to travel, especially in a big group. Although the only criticism I have with it is the current system, the way they've showed it. If you fall out of the quantum tunnel, you just get dropped in a random location, either in the system that you were leaving or in the system that you were headed to, which, to some extent makes sense, but I don't like how calm it seems, because when you drop out, you just kind of like vanish out of the wormhole.
Well, they said it
Whereas,
looks like you should be taking damage from it.
yeah, well,
Yeah, you get
so
distortion damage.
yeah, you take distortion damage. But what I think should be happening is not only will you take distortion damage and probably have to wait for your ship to reboot after falling out of the hole, but I think it would make a lot of sense for the ship to get like caught on the walls, so to speak, and get flipped around a bunch. I think it would make it a little bit more chaotic and interesting rather than just appearing somewhere and having your
Someone has been
ship be
watching
shut
their
down.
cowboy.
Well, I just think it would be more interesting and engaging because it's like it seems more like a kind of Star Wars adventure sort of thing, or Lost at Sea, where you screw up during a wormhole travel, like, and now you're adrift trying to restore power or fix your ship. And then I also thought it would be interesting if, in addition to either dropping you in the system you're headed to or the one you came from, obviously when there's more solar systems, it could potentially dump you in one that's like in between the two or close by. But I also thought it would be interesting if they had like a kind of separate map area, if that's possible for them to do. I would assume it is. You can't like go anywhere per se because there's no quantum points. But it's like a limited map size, kind of like they had with the Pyro playtest. And it would probably have to be some, like, just to save on server resources, it would have to probably be like something akin to the airspace around Iewa, which is still like hundreds of in radius, but it's you wouldn't be able to go anywhere. But I just think it would be a cool idea to have like a deep space section that, so when you fell out of the wormhole, you have the potential to end up somewhere in deep space and feel like you're, lost at sea.
Yeah, if
Yeah, but
that's
then you run
possible,
into the issue: how do you get back?
So
well,
I also had an idea for that too, which is in that same kind of deep space area, there would have to be a mandatory, like, unstable wormhole somewhere that you would have to presumably scan for, but it would be there, like guaranteed to be there. And at the discretion of the developers, that wormhole would either lead back to where you came from or continue forward to the whatever system you were heading to, or potentially to a different system entirely. But, that would be up to the discretion of the developers.
My question is, when they say like if you fall out of the wormhole, they say you could appear in random places of the system, like either you're going to or coming from. Is it would be like how far away? Because it'd be funny if like you're trying to go to Pyro and you fall out and all of a sudden it dumps you out at the Terra jump point, which is the opposite side of the system, or it just dumps you into the atmosphere of Microtech and you have no power, so you're like trying to frantically get your ship turned back on.
well, that's the
Right,
aspect
and
that bothers me from like a reality standpoint is how does the travel work when you're going between systems that you can appear outside, the tunnel and just be in one of those systems like that. I almost think that it would be more accurate to do it the way you're describing, Sean, where you just end up sort of in this no man's land of space and have to find your way back. And given that, like, those parameters where you have to repair your ship somehow or find another gate to get somewhere, a transient gate, like, I think that would be a much better option than just being dumped in some random point in one of the systems.
yeah, and I'm also trying to think of this in a way that would make it really easy for the developers to implement. That's why, I've floated the idea of potentially along the so to be honest, I don't know how the wormhole itself works, but so from basically from what I can tell, right, is because I know that when you go into the wormhole, you're physically traveling from Anton to Pyro, right? But if
Mm.
you, from what I'm gathering, I think the wormhole itself is actually really short, but they just lengthen it for the purpose of making it feel like you're embarking on a journey, because what they're saying, if
Should be
you,
about like 3 minutes long.
yeah, but if you get into the wormhole and then one minute in, you hit the wall and you fall out, you're probably going to end up in Stanton, back where you were. Because what I'm imagining is happening is they probably have this wormhole where past a certain threshold, it guarantees that you're either in Pyro or in Stanton. So it's like somebody took a pill bottle and melted the middle and then stretched it out. So, but in terms of the wormhole, it's still the same length, if that makes sense. But now it just has all these twists and turns in it to make it feel longer. I don't know if that's a good way to describe it, but based on how they're describing it, my understanding is that there's a definitive cutoff point for if you fall out towards the end or towards the beginning, which system you'll end up in.
Yeah, it's essentially a mini game that once you get, give or take halfway through, you're either in one system or the other if you fall out.
Right. But I think it would be interesting if along certain pathways in and they could even make it simpler if they wanted. Like, it could just be certain length points. So like if you fall out, let's just use an arbitrary unit of measure. If you fall out of the wormhole at 1 astronomical unit versus 2 astronomical units, you might encounter different points of interest that are in the deep space area. And I thought it would be interesting if they repurposed some of those points of interest from like the derelict ships, or maybe a couple of the asteroid fields that they have, or even potentially they could use assets from some of the arena commander maps that they have. But that way, when your ship is damaged from falling out of the wormhole, like even if it's arbitrary, distortion-based damage, and it's not like serious critical damage, you could still have some semblance of of recognition that this has happened to other people before, and maybe they weren't so lucky. And so, you're seeing these destroyed ships or abandoned locations, and I personally think that kind of makes it almost into an adventure where you screw up and now you have to you've been sidetracked, essentially.
Get sent to the back rooms.
Yeah, kinda, and you have to problem solve to get your way out of there. But I think to make it, like I said, to make it fair, you'd have to have a guaranteed way out. You just have to find it.
Yeah, like there's resources available to do what you need to do, and that could be in the form of a derelict ship, or maybe minables or things like that, where you could generate or repair whatever you need to repair, and then search around for a transient wormhole or another side entrance or whatever.
Well, it's also in regards to the transient wormholes. When I was watching that video, they said that they're going to come in 3 different sizes.
That's also true.
So what happens if you're in a large ship and the only transient wormholes that appearing are small?
Well, I think they could easily address that just by having the transient wormhole that appears in those fissures be the biggest one possible,
or one that's sized for the ship that you're in. Because realistically, there shouldn't be, for example, like 2 ships dumped out at the same point.
Right, and
they'd have their
even
own
if there are, you could just default to the largest exit tunnel.
Yeah. And that reminds me, wasn't there talk about like navigating the jump point through the wormhole, and there would be like alternate routes that you could take,
Yes.
and some were faster and some were more dangerous?
Yeah,
I know they said also that they plan on adding more debris in the jump points. Like as you're going through the wormhole, there should be things in there.
I've
Well,
also heard that. I don't know.
I think there's
if that's-
currently some things to avoid in them. I think I recall them saying.
Yeah, but they're more like quantum rifts. I don't think
Yeah.
it's actual debris. See, that's why I think that
Well, how
having
could there be
a
debris in there?
potential. That's what I'm saying. That's why I think, because the debris would be traveling at speed and
Right.
wouldn't be able to navigate out of the wormhole, so it would just get spit out somewhere, and that's why
Yeah,
I
it
think.
either would exit out the side or get shot out the end.
Yeah, but that's why I think it's so interesting that that you could potentially have these small playable areas of quote unquote deep space, and then do a little bit of set dressing with them, like not nothing serious, just like a couple random object placement, enough to make it feel like people have crashed out there, or gotten spit out the wormhole and then died of starvation or something. You know what I mean?
I mean,
I
I
think
hate to be the Debbie Downer on this. Maybe in a few years, but right now, we know these jump points are for one reason only: to get between servers.
There's
right.
loading screens, glorified loading
No, and
screens, essentially.
Mhm.
I agree that I don't think this is something that would happen soon, but I do think that it would be difficult to do because they already have like derelict ships and stuff that they can just place wherever they want, essentially. I also thought that this might be a really good way for them to introduce new alien species too, or even just do a little bit of storytelling with existing ones. Like one of the examples that I had come up with was if you like, let's say you were traveling to Pyro, for example, and you missed a turn and you fall out of the wormhole, your ship gets tossed around and you're disabled for a few minutes, and you finally you're wrestling the controls and you gain back control of the ship, and you do some of your minor repairs. Maybe an engine was damaged because you hit an asteroid slightly or something. Maybe you come across a starfarer and board it from the refueling deck, and you look down into the cargo hold, and you see all these cages. Some of them are open, some are tipped over. There's skeletons in some of them, and it's the fucking dogs, the copions or whatever it is they
Opium.
added. Yeah, and the ship is just full of them. That would be pretty cool. It's like you stumbled across somebody who's maybe selling them to like an illegal fighting ring or something, and you have to fight for your life, trying to get, maybe if you needed some extra parts or something, you're fighting for your life, trying to get off the ship at that point.
And you're like
I don't know.
writing your own lore now.
Yeah, it's a cool idea because it very much reminds me of almost like, and I said I used this as an example before, almost like a Star Wars kind of side quest adventure sort of thing. Because when they have to fly the Millennium Falcon into the cave to do repairs, and then it ends up that the cave is full of Minox, and then Han shoots the ground or whatever, and then they find out it's a giant space worm. Like it's like one thing led to another, and that kind of becomes like a separate little adventure almost. But for lack of a better phrase, I think it's a good way to falling
It's like
out of to make it undesirable to fall out of a wormhole while you're doing a quantum travel, because then you get majorly sidetracked, but then also at the same time make it fun and engaging to try and get back to what you were originally doing, if that makes sense.
yeah. Plus, it's the whole aspect is essentially world building. Like there's these
Right.
other things that aren't maybe not directly related to a mission or directly related to anything that you can do in either of the systems, but there's just these little adventures you can go on that kind of extend gameplay.
I even thought that maybe they could throw Port Olisar in one of these like random like deep space areas. Like
Or
maybe
just
they
some
could,
other station that's been derelict and ended up somewhere in deep space.
yeah, like maybe it's just been floating. But like there's so much that they could do because they already have these models. Like do you remember the Kovalex shipping hub station?
Yeah, I was thinking
Where
about that the other day and how I haven't been to one in forever just to even check it out.
Yeah, but it's a great example of a model that if they really wanted to, they could just throw it in there like for extra set dressing, because people people would undoubtedly run into it, but it wouldn't be such a high volume of people that if they put it there as a placeholder while they were building purpose-built assets, nobody would really point a finger and say, "Hey, you're reusing that same station," and be super critical about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think my only question is like, how do those things get there? Because if they're in uncharted
Well,
space and they wouldn't have been placed there, they'd have to end up there somehow.
yeah, and my running theory is perhaps a wormhole swallows things at random. That
Yeah, I
could be
mean,
part of the lore.
there is transient wormholes, so there could exist the theory that a wormhole could swallow objects.
I'm going with the Furious Scooter. Tried to move it.
What?
Ah,
Scooter tried to move the
Scooter,
station.
yeah, in one of his videos, I think Scooter moved Port Olisar with like
Yeah.
the Argo tractor or something.
Yeah, they could make Scooter Cannon and have him be the cause of some station disaster, got swallowed up, and now it's in deep
Yep.
space.
Hey, I definitely think that that's a plausibility at the very least, because if you think about it, the capital ships have huge quantum drives, so I almost wonder if they were gonna go for explaining this by the lower angle, maybe a capital ship used a transient warp hole too close to a space station, and then the space station got sucked in. I don't know. That's just a theory.
Yeah, that sounds a little bit of like a stretch, at least right now, anyway. But I guess anything's
Yeah,
possible with.
I don't know. I do think it's a cool concept though, of specifically being sidetracked, being forced to go on a little adventure to get back to where you're going. I just think that sounds fun in general.
Yeah, it sounds way more fun than just being dumped out at some point in either of the systems, based on how far along you are. Like, I almost would rather that you just explode because it just doesn't really seem very, I guess, I don't know. I hate to be pushing the point of realism, but it feels less realistic to just pick some random spot and jump you out because that insinuates that these wormholes like zigzag across the two systems in some way where either there's various exit points across either one of them, which is to me more far fetched than just like, oh, if you pass through, you die.
I'm
Yeah,
sure there will in the future, but right now we just have to accept as
I
it.
think I think at the very least, what they should do is, like in a short-term solution for the release of 4.0. Well, I guess it's solution is not the right word because it's not like it's really a problem. We want to make the experience more immersive, especially if you screw up. Think that not only should your ship get shut down if you fall out of the quantum wormhole, but you should also get spun the hell around like a bunch.
That just sounds like crazy talk now.
No, I think it makes sense though, because you're traveling at, faster than light speeds through these wormholes, and you're telling me that you're just gonna come to an abrupt stop after falling out of one? I don't think so.
Well, that's what I was telling. Like, I mean, if you're going to introduce the realism of the actual exit procedure, like I was telling you that what would probably happen is that your ship would just get ripped atom by atom apart, like as you're
Yeah.
transitioning through. So, like, realistically, there shouldn't be a way to like spit you out at all, let alone with damage that is less than catastrophic.
So, like, I agree with you, right? But I also don't think they're gonna do that because I can
No.
already hear the angry keyboard warriors being like, "Oh, yeah, I touched the wall by like 2 inches and my ship was instantly blown to smithereens." You know, so I don't think they're ever gonna do that, especially now that they've moved away from their realism and more towards this arcade style of gameplay, as much as they aren't going to admit that. So, the
Or it just pops you out the same way you came in at full speed. God
Yeah,
forbid there's anyone
face
waiting to
first
queue
into
up.
whoever's there. Yeah.
It's like Wii bowling, everyone just pops up.
See, that would almost make it fun to just rub the wall until it spits you out into somebody.
And then everyone charges you with a homicide.
I
yeah.
think it'd be worth it. Well, I think it
Realism.
would.
Because we're agents of chaos.
I don't know. Kind of at a loss on this topic today. I don't think I got enough
We
sleep.
don't know much about it. We're hoping for more, but we know that it's not going to be much. We know it's just to, server hop.
What about the player-driven economy? Because I know that's also been a hot topic lately about how, if you make a mission to move things, they ideally want to move away from too many NPC stuff and, have some opportunity for people to pick up missions from, what you call it, pick up missions from other players and orgs and, just like independent, I guess independent contractors is a better way to phrase it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be ultimately I guess the way I view it is the best way to kind of have a realistic economy short of having Quanta finally brought into the game. A true supply and demand system. The only problem is it would be difficult to do with a 100-player cap. And I always kind of imagine that it would be the result of probably the aspect of base building.
Right.
Because it would be a need to like move things for people who don't have the adequately sized ships or facilities to generate construction materials and all that kind of stuff. So I always figured those two would be sort of hand in hand. But you can see that the future is or it can support with these new cargo missions. It would just be a matter of changing them from server generated to player generated. But I also think that that's just an aspect that needs to exist, whether it's cargo or just ships in general or parts. Like there should be a way to transfer things without having to physically transfer them yourself. Like if I could put out a contract to move quantum drives or ship weapons or shield generators or whatever from one place to another, and either that could be a player contract or just a server contract where it has like a timer that counts down. Like if you want to move 40 SCUs worth of stuff, it takes X number of minutes to do it. Like that would be cool, and that would be much appreciated because it would be things that I can do passively and not have to worry about spending time moving things and protecting them and stuff like that.
Right. Although that does bring up an interesting point, is if you pay someone like through the contract manager, presumably, and let's say for argument's sake they have, I don't know, a liberator, so a pocket carrier, and if you pay them to move your Aurora from Stanton to Pyro, whatever reason, I don't know how, at least in the current build of the game, I don't know how they would access your ship to move it, because
Elevator, but bigger.
That's what I'm trying to wrap
like
my head
maybe
around, is if you weren't going to be transporting yourself with the ship, like if that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around right now, is
well, we've kind of seen
not
it
an
already.
insurance claim.
When you take a contract for it, that stuff becomes part of the thing you can access when you get there. So if private hangars are now ubiquitous, for example, if you accept a contract and you go to a hangar, you can pull up the thing you need to pull up, which in this instance would be a ship, and then you would place that ship on your ship or whatever so that you could then transport it. So it's still locked. It's a physical object that you have to move, so that fits into the gameplay. And then when you get there, you have to unload it and put it, lower it down to your warehouse as part of the completion of the mission.
Right, but then it would still need to be, like, if you had to physically move the ship from storage, like fly it and put it on the Liberator in this example, there would need to be another elevator, because you can't pull it out on the elevator if the Liberator's already sitting on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, currently, yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe the answer is just cargo elevators get bigger, because I think that's one of the complaints, is that they are relatively small for what they need to deliver. Or there is the aspect of like NPC loading, so maybe ships or parts or things that require ownership or something like that are not loaded by you, they're loaded by NPCs, and so you have to go and stand out there and it either poofs into existence, kind of the way it works now. There's some magic way of having a ship landed or teleported to your ship or something.
Or you have to go to a pickup location.
The only other thing I could think of is maybe the ship gets placed in your warehouse, but you don't have access to it, and the only way you have access to it is if you store the Liberator, for example, in the warehouse, and then, go to the cargo terminal and tell it to put the Aurora on the Liberator and then bring the Liberator back up.
Yeah, that's true. That is another aspect that's missing, because they have said that you're going to have the ability to spawn ships essentially with other ships already loaded onto them. So maybe that goes hand in hand with that aspect of it. So like, you store your Liberator in this example, and then you call out the Liberator, but have your shipping Aurora placed into it. Maybe it's like crated up or something fancy, so it's clearly like you can't just get in it or break into it or whatever. and it's just this
Right.
object that sits in your ship hangar or one of your landing pads or whatever the designated area is for it, and then you haul it to where you need to go and then reverse the process to complete the mission.
Yeah, that's what I would imagine. Because I would imagine if you had to move it yourself, then it would be really easy just to abuse that to steal people's ships, and then it would kind of defeat the purpose of them creating this entire mission structure, because people would just take the ship and scrap it, you know?
Now,
Or at least that's what I would do if I was presented with essentially a free ship to do with what I pleased. But so I would think that the system you and I just outlined would probably be the most likely, and the ship would probably still be there. I doubt they would box it up. I think it would just be inaccessible no matter what you do to it. Would probably be to make the most sense.
yeah, I think it would be cool if it was kind of packaged up or something. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to these, I guess, kind of adventure sports stores where they sell like motorcycles and watercraft and stuff. And they're just in these like
Yeah.
wooden crates, like wrapped in shrink wrap plastic or something. And you could still see through that it's, you know, whatever vehicle it is, but it's crated up.
Oh, I agree. I think it would be cool, but I don't know if that is something that CIG would bother doing when they could just
Yeah,
lock the doors of the ship.
I guess so. But is that really that secure?
Oh, but they could also just do a modifier, like a mission modifier for ships that are being transported like that, or be they're invincible or something.
Yeah, that's true. You just tag them that way. And now I'm just picturing, you know, those double decker semi trucks that
Yeah,
carry cars, the car carriers. I just see like the space equivalent of that, like a caterpillar with like two stacks of ships on it moving.
like there's definitely things they could do to prevent piracy well, not piracy per se, but non-intended piracy. Because I think if
Well,
you
that brings
if you
up
were the
something
if you were the
though.
no, go ahead.
Like if I as the transporter get pirated, you know, how does that what effect would that have on the load that I'm carrying if that load is quote unquote locked? You know, if it's invincible and inaccessible, is there anything to gain from that? Because that kind of flies in the face of their theology, which is kind of like if you see opportunity to strike, you can strike and make money with it. So there would have to be some kind of method for dealing with that aspect as well.
Right, and maybe that method could be the hacking gameplay.
So that would be interesting. And then
Because so the way that could potentially work is the pilot and the mission receiver wouldn't have access to the hacking gameplay on their delivery items, but anybody who presumably assaults the ship could access the hacking to unlock the cargo, and in this case the cargo being the ships.
or they do, and the reputation system keeps that in check, maybe.
Yeah, that's also possible. They could just have it be set, as you say, to the hacking system is available to anyone regardless. But, obviously if you are the mission giver and you do some naughty no-no business, then your reputation goes down the shitter.
Yeah, because that's really the only true policing that's going to happen, right? Is this idea of reputation.
Right. And I think it makes sense too. Like if you're trying to be a good, upstanding delivery man, if you make one or two oopsies, it probably is, not gonna affect your reputation too badly. But if you make very big, like intentional oopsies, like, oh, this is the third time I've unlocked a ship, your reputation should just absolutely tank. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then wonder if that relates to if there's avenues for dealing with that with the EVR system. Like if effort is related to, for example, how much of a hit you take in rep. So, if you're taking a small Aurora versus, I don't know, something big enough to fit on the Liberator, like a Prospector, right? If the punishment is more severe because the value is higher.
Yeah, that's
I
also
would think
possible.
so.
Yeah, like I could imagine, for instance, a vulture that's fully laden with RMC and you're designated to transport that somewhere. If you take the ship or the cargo, like if you hack into the ship and take the cargo, then not only would you be marked as, having done a no-no, on the job, but you would also take an even bigger rep hit for stealing their cargo. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and how does this tie into, I guess what I'm most interested in as far as player driven economy goes is like the idea that resources are related to the amount that gets moved. And so if there's like a general server rule, like how we currently have the way that landing zones get restocked, and, they're
Yeah.
basically at a tick rate. But if demand is high, the amazing journal that we have, which is supposed to give us like up to date sort of demand issues, like if there was a better usage of that said, hey, like we're paying a premium here because people are buying tons of this. If you bring it, we'll pay you more. That's kind of that's another aspect of the player driven economy that interests me too, is like having this true sort of supply and demand system to move things around and rely less on the servers having to do it, and more on it gives players something to do and rewards them commensurate with the effort that they're putting in, and eliminates the frustration of having to stand around and wait. Potentially, it's like, I know we've tried to buy cargo at times and it's just like you're waiting for the server to restock, and since they all kind of share that same resource, it can take forever to get a ship full of stuff.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like, I don't think they can entirely depend on players to drive the economy as much as they want to. I don't think that's I don't think that's going to work in their favor.
Yeah, and probably the biggest aspect is just the incentives. If they're not paying enough and it's not worth the effort, no one's going to want to do it. But then there's also, it's going to depend on sort of the population and what they're interested in. So if an event is going on, there's going to be a much lower number of people attempting to do these style of missions. But maybe that's when the payouts get greater to pull people away from events, for example, and have them do these missions to move commodities around the system.
Yeah, because that is another thing that is worth mentioning, is literally the only way they're going to get any significant number of people to participate in the economy is to make it very lucrative, because it has to be worth your time, otherwise literally no one is going.
There's another aspect of Quanta that utilized NPCs. The thought was that they would be moving these things across the system as well, so it would introduce the ability for people to pirate non-players. So if I guess a more realistic way, if we're looking at realism again, would be to like have these NPCs physically moving those things, so that if the demand wasn't being met, then there would be more NPCs dispatched to move those commodities instead.
Right. Or at the very least, if not NPCs, then there needs to, I think the tick rate system might have to also stay in place to ensure that, the economy just doesn't completely fall apart.
How do you view the relationship between servers and the economy? As it sits right now, we have essentially one pool of available things. All the servers have essentially the same tick rate. And so everybody on every server who, in this, I guess, for example, is trying to buy RMC are at the mercy of the server tick rate and availability. But when people buy from one server, it affects the other. Should that be the norm moving forward?
To be completely honest, that system, like, I think that the tick rate might have to stay in place just to make sure that stocks never run dry. Because as we've been saying, if you can't incentivize players to do any of your transport missions, then stuff might have to continue to be as they are now. But on the other side of that coin, there's dealing with the problems. It's such a logistical nightmare for them. Like, to some extent, I really sympathize, but I'm also heavily critical of how they handle this, because the current system where basically the economy is more or less shared between servers, and you can't really, even though none of these servers are connected to each other, like they're, it's not, we don't have server meshing yet. So the notion that if somebody buys out all of the, I don't know, laranite at some location, and that affects me even though I'm on a different server is pretty annoying. Granted, it's been quite some time since I've bought laranite specifically, but it still illustrates my point. I don't really know best way to tackle that problem. I would have to think about it more.
The issue is if you take it away now and like every server has its own tracking of commodities, it's going to be hard for you to figure out what's worth anything.
Right.
I think
So,
the reason is probably to limit, or I guess in this case not limit, but completely avoid players hopping from server to server to find one that has the things they need to buy and then hoarding it maybe.
You know, they buy everything they can. Oh, it's not selling on this server. Let's hop to another one.
right. But I mean, I don't know, dude. Like I'm really grasping at straws because the way that they have their economy set up, to me, it basically looks like a bunch of spaghetti strung together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I almost feel as though there shouldn't be, and of course this is coming from somebody who's utilized SC tools and sites like that to kind of make the best runs. But if I think about the best way to play the game with a truly functioning economy, those websites shouldn't be able to exist. Like maybe there's certain routes because stations only buy certain commodities, but there shouldn't be a way to like look up the price of something and be able to calculate how much money you're going to make because it fluctuates all the time.
Yeah, like there needs to be distinct supply and demand. Like the commodity price alerts aren't enough. They need to really have a dedicated system in place that tells the player what places demand what things and where they should go to buy them and then subsequently sell them. Like there shouldn't be a reason for these third-party websites to exist, but they haven't invested any time into doing that. Instead, they let the community figure out, oh, what are the best routes to do, X, Y, and Z, when really it needs to be in the game so that people can see what's what. It's
Well, they've sort of put
it,
work into that. We just haven't seen anything from it in like almost 2 years, and that's Quanta, right? Like that was the system to move things around, utilizing players and some NPCs to make a more realistic economy happen.
and but the problem with the Quanto stuff is we don't get to see any of that as the players. It's not like we have an app in the Moby Glass that say here that
Oh
says
yeah,
here
it's
or
still a
the
black
stock.
box.
Yeah, you just get the journal entries that hint at things, but and then the rest of it is just like you don't get any app that says like what stocks or what demand is up today. Like does a station want medical supplies? There's nothing to indicate that. And then also, I really hope that these cargo missions that they're planning to add bring in like more than just regular cargo requests, but also special orders, because then you can also account for those big payouts that you're talking about, like the big payout jobs where some location really needs a resource badly. So, you know, they say, hey, we're willing to pay you, 300,000 credits if you can bring us 500 SCU of medical supplies. And, whoever the first person to bring them, uh, like, I think even if you don't bring in exactly 500, you should probably still get paid something, but it won't be the full bonus amount for, selling it to them. It'll be like a percentage of the bonus amount. Um, but obviously whoever brings them the most in that, before they get enough supplies will get the biggest bonus payout from that mission. You know what I mean?
I mean, it would depend how it's set up because that could disincentivize people if they have only a smaller cargo vessel, but also if they are unsure how many or who's going to get there first. Like it's kind of like a radio call-in system now. Like
Right.
some people may hesitate or not call it all because they're just going to say, by the time I get there, they'll have bought it all and I won't be able to sell what I have. So I'm not even going to try. So it almost has to function. Actually, I mean, it can't even do that. So I was going to say it almost has to function like Xeno threat where there's these things that need to be moved from here to there, and there's like a shared tally of what has been received. But even then, if I have to buy cargo and the tally's close, I'm not gonna try because I don't want to have a ship full of commodities that nobody wants that potentially may have cost me as much or more than I can sell them for.
Well, maybe I should clarify. The context in which I was thinking is a mission that pops up randomly, and it's not something that's always going to be there. And I think it should also have a maximum number of players who could accept it, hypothetically. So like, and they would have to that like they could play with all sorts of parameters to get these dialed in as well. But say, for example, Port Olisar. Oh, sorry, forgot that they removed that one.
Yeah, Port Olisar is dead. Move on.
No, so let's say, for example, Grim, an outbreak of the flu, whatever. They need 500 SCU of medical supplies stat. You can get paid whatever selling the medical supplies is worth. On top of that, a bonus of up to 500,000, right? But let's say for the argument of this mission parameter, only 2 people can accept that mission at a time. Instead of competing with the entire server for that mission, whenever it's up, you can only be ever competing with one other person to deliver that cargo. So then it becomes, and then if those happen frequently, and they could be different parameters too, like different cargo amounts, different payouts. Like I would say it would make a lot of sense for them to offer small ones that to like 5 or 10 people that can accept them at a time for like 50 SU to transport, but the payout is like a bonus of maybe 50k or something, on top of whatever the sell price is. Like to put it simply, there's a lot of space for playing with what numbers are needed versus how much you get paid, and then also how many people can accept the same mission at the same time, because they could also have missions that only one person can accept, so in that case you have no competition to deliver that cargo.
Yeah. And actually you brought up an example where there's medical supplies needed because of a flu outbreak, and we have all of these POIs spread across all these moons and planets that are essentially useless for the most part, other than to maybe visit. So it would be an interesting way potentially to bring those in as a place to go if they put out missions like that. Like, oh, we need these commodities delivered here, and that's something that you could accept. Or maybe that's just what already exists in cargo missions. We haven't had the chance to play any yet that may already exist now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, I don't know, 'cause I haven't, so I'm not on the Evocati, and nor could I even play it right now, even if I wanted to, but my understanding of how they work is it's very much just on the surface level. Like I said, I don't have any personal experience in it, so I'm not going to make any, extraneous claims about, what it is or is not. But from what I've seen, it seems like it's mostly corporations that are asking you to do delivery jobs of various sizes from one place to another. So it doesn't seem like, from what I've seen of it, it doesn't seem like it contains any special request deliveries like the ones we're talking about.
Yeah, but the foundation is there. I can't see why it would be super difficult to create scenarios like the one you described.
What do you think, Alex? I mean, you're the whole brains of this operation.
I don't know. It's
coming down with a case of the sniffles yourself.
Dude, I've been sick.
Call in a medical supply.
He needs some medical supplies delivered to his house.
I guess with the certain missions, like opening it up to everybody at once, it's going to cause issues. Either everyone's going to try and take it, and it's going to be a fight ensuing, or nobody's going to take it because
that's why I think there's. No, go ahead. Sorry.
They're going to have that philosophy of, oh, I'm not going to take it because everyone else is going to take it. It's going to be too much of a hassle. But if they have them pop up like we need to talk, like occasional missions that just pop up for everybody, that's not timed. Like once you log in, like after 5 minutes, you get your mission pops ups.
Yeah, it's kind of like that that mission in the wake of disaster or money from nothing. There's these kind of evergreen things that pop up occasionally.
Yeah,
Don't have it pop up across like notifying everyone at once, but it notifies you as you log in.
I think a better, well, that's one avenue, but I also think that there's room for them to just have the cargo missions be an opt-in. So you could go into the cargo mission tabs, and much like Call to Arms, you would have something like live cargo alerts or something that you would opt into and get alerted of, big cash day payouts. But I think there's also room for them just to have like a laundry list of missions that'll randomly pop up. It and being the same kind that I talked about, where they have varying rewards, and some are limited to one person, and others might be limited to like 5 people can be on the same mission at the same time, and even you could even make it a collaborative effort, like Mike was saying, where it works a little bit like Xenothreat, where if 5 people do a mission, they like, for the sake of the argument, let's say none of them know each other, they're not in the party, whatever. But if 5 people do a mission to deliver 2,000 SU of cargo, right? They might get a small contribution for all participating in delivering it. But
like
then
the tokens they hand out for certain things now.
Right, but then I think also it could be possible for, if one person delivered all of the cargo, I think it would make sense for the people involved to maybe receive like a percentage of the final payout just for, putting in effort, or at the very least, the mission would refund them whatever they spent on however much cargo they bought. Although I don't know about that part. Because I think, like I said, there's room for ones that are competitive and also not competitive. So you could have collaborative ones like that, but maybe they would be for smaller order. Well, see, that's the main thing, because you would only want collaborative for large orders, right? But then if you have a large order and people buy a lot of supplies, but then they miss out on delivering it, how?
What if it's more of
Oh, no, I got it. So I've got it. I've got a solution.
All right, this better be good.
And feel free to curb stomp me if if you think it's stupid. But
all right, take your helmet off.
All right, let's say same example. Deliver 2,000 SU of whatever to some station. So in this argument, let's say somebody takes a hull C and they sell all 2,000 SU immediately, or almost immediately. And for the sake of the argument, let's say there's 4 other people who have, varying amounts of cargo that they were going to contribute. I think they should still be able, like, because they were participating in the mission and it was a collaborative effort, they should still be able to go to the station in question and sell the cargo that they have to them. And it would even say so in the mission statement, like when the mission, is completed, it wouldn't have completed for them yet because they didn't finish their delivery. So when they get there, the station will still buy their stuff for a slight profit, and then they get a little additional bonus for not even 10K, maybe like a little bonus to cover fuel costs or something for them doing this as a collaborative effort.
Okay, I don't think that deserves a curb stomp, but I will see your idea and raise you that essentially it is a mission, in a general mission, wherein you have a kind of like a salvage contract where you buy into it and you go to a location where there's a pool of cargo. So anybody, any ship and of any size can contribute, and then you get paid out when that stuff is moved, regardless of who moves it. But the amount that you move determines the amount of money you get, maybe like a percentage. Like maybe there's a base pay and then a percentage bonus for how much you move.
Yeah. I think
realistically, what they should do is everyone who, I'm doing air quotes here, participates gets a specific payout. But every time you turn something in, based on the number of boxes you turn in, you get an additional payout.
Yeah, that's what he said.
What I said. There's a base pay. Since you bought into the contract, you need to get at least that money back, right? And then a little bit more for your time and effort. And then if you were a big ship and you moved a bunch of boxes, you get a bigger, like a little bigger bonus. And if you're a, you know, if you're an Aurora that moved 6 boxes, you know, you didn't contribute a whole lot, but you did accept the mission. You paid in, you helped complete it, so you get.
You tried, little buddy.
You did. You get it. Go get them, Slugger. You get, you know, your money back plus a little bit extra, and then, you know, 6 times whatever the percentage is for your contribution bonus.
Yeah, I think that sounds a lot better than mine. See, because I was trying to also look at it in terms of how it could potentially be competitive, but I think that's like a completely different category. Because I think you could branch these sort of missions into 3 or 4 different categories. One, which is solo contracts, you know, so contracts that are only meant to be filled out spontaneously, you know, as they pop up by solo pilot, you know, or either a solo pilot or a team, like, you know, one solo unit. And then you have the competitive contracts, the collaborative contracts, like you just mentioned, and then probably just a 4th category for something that they could come up with, I don't know, emergency transport contracts, something like that.
High priority transports.
High priority.
And these are dangerous cargo, maybe, or something that has limitations. That'd be cool.
Like
to move.
limitation.
I hate to continue to utilize like Zeta Prolinite or whichever one's the one that can't quantum, but things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some other kind of like unstable
hazardous cargo.
Yeah, hazardous cargo. Or unstable or ultra valuable that allows. I don't know, because I think about, if you remember like the golden ticket scenario for buying the Lightning and how it was 1 per server and stuff, and everybody knew who had it, like it was announced and you could track them down. Like maybe there's those kinds of missions too, where if you're opted in for cargo, for example, it was like, hey, by the way, there's this really valuable cargo here. You know, you could be the first to deliver it if you stop these dudes from doing it.
Right. See, that could be fun as well. But I think those are all valid points of like cargo missions that you could view, not only by, you know, looking at the cargo mission manifest, but also by opting into cargo mission alerts.
Yeah, and actually you mentioned that, and I was thinking that's actually probably a good idea that they could implement now, because it is getting a little spammy with all these sort of pop-up mission stuff. Like as soon as you log in, you're hit with like 2 or 3 things, and even more when there's like an event going on and all these other alerts for like your journal's been updated and blah blah blah. Like it would be nice to have a little bit of control about what you see, because if you're not interested in Wake of Disaster and you're not interested in Jump Town, Ghost Hollow, like you can just opt out of that stuff and not get those messages all the time, because they do interfere with other things like player or party requests and things like that, or medical contracts and stuff. So it would be nice to be able to filter out some of the noise.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think it would be pretty easy for them to do as well, because you already have missions like Call to Arms, where, you know, you activate them and they just stay active in the background even if you're not tracking them. So I think they could apply a same message or the same kind of system where, you know, it's like, you know, one of those famous if checks, like if player has this mission active, show them the notifications. yeah if this player has, you know, this mission active, then show them the mission notifications or whatever.
Yeah, and if keep permanent checkbox is selected, stop making them have to reactivate it like Call to Arms.
Yeah,
so
I don't know,
do you have a hot take this week? I don't know, we didn't talk about it beforehand, but
I do, but it's more of a minor hot take, and
there's nothing minor with you.
It has to do
all right, well, let's do the hot take and then we'll wrap it up, because we're at about time.
I don't like the new MFDs. I don't like them.
Really?
Yeah. From what I've seen of them, they don't look very, what's the word? They look too distracting. Like there's too much noise going on, and it doesn't just display the information that you need to know, like right then and there.
You know, I'm gonna put my experience and interface designer hat on right now, and let you, or I guess, share that that's kind of a problem in general with CIG's sort of interface design, is that there's just too much going on all the time. But I will be honest, I haven't actually looked at that closely. I didn't even notice they were different until someone pointed it out on, I think, Reddit. And I was like, oh, yeah, there are new ones. But having not looked, I'm inclined to agree with you because just in general, interfaces from CIG are pretty muddled up with information.
Yeah, like even the I actually preferred a lot of aspects from the old flight HUD, like how fuel was displayed as a numerical value instead of a bar. That made it way easier to track your fuel usage in general.
Yeah. Plus, it gives you a more accurate number. I mean, it's not entirely necessary, especially for things like quantum fuel. But if you try to make a jump you can't make, it warns you. So I guess it's a little bit unnecessary, but it is also nice to have that granular level of information as well, instead of this sort of abstract concept of a bar, which I'm looking at
Yeah,
the MFDs now, and they really kind of lean into that bar dynamic. Let me share the screen
yeah, and
for anybody who's watching and for you
please do,
guys.
because if I'm not mistaken, I think they changed the way the power triangle works. No, no, they don't have the power triangle in this one.
It's
Or
not
do
in
they?
this.
Is that what
It's
those bars are?
Well, it's not in this example, maybe, but I do recall hearing somebody say something about no more triangle. So you might be on the right track with that.
Oh, if they took away the triangle, because the triangle is so easy to understand. Like it's very simple. Top right's or top right is shields, top left is guns, top or bottom is engines, whatever.
Feeling
But
very
if that new bar
Star
thing
Wars
I'm seeing,
Squadrons and Elite Dangerous here.
Yeah, it does.
no,
This is really
just
pulling some, and I have my cursor going around this sort of center green
yeah, I
screen
can see
here.
it.
This is super like Star Wars targeting system looking to me. But I do kind of like the 2D radar versus the
The
hard
2D
to see
radar I
3D
don't
one that
mind.
they utilize a lot.
No, my issue is not is I'd have to see it more. Maybe the targeting screen, it looks a little funky. I'd have to see what the targeted ship looks like in it. The weapon screen looks fine. It's basically the same. The ship self status might be okay. I'd have to look at it a little closer. But if
Yeah,
that
it
is the
looks really
power triangle
small.
above it, I hate that. I absolutely hate that. It's why would you change it to bars? It's just like the power, like, look, I'm all for improving things, but there are some things that just don't need to be changed. And the power triangle was very, very, very easy to understand. And this, if at a quick glance, it's going to be like, yes, the argument could be made that you can probably get hang of it if this is in fact what I think it is. But if this is the future of the power triangle, I don't want it. It's no, no, thank you.
Hate to break it to you, don't really have much of a say.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah.
Well, I guess one thing to
It's not
point
like
out
I'm
too is that this is Drake's setup, right? So every
right.
manufacturer is going to have their own look and feel, quote unquote look and feel. So a lot of this criticism, I guess, should be asterisked with the fact that we're looking at Drake MFDs, and maybe some of the other
Well,
ones
also
might
that it
be
could change in
more
general.
efficient.
Like we don't. This might not be their final version.
Right. I mean, it does say pretty big on the bottom, work in progress. I mean, and you can see it too. Like if you look at this, there's just arrays of buttons that are really just like the same Tetris block, sort of stuck on each screen. Like they just copy and pasted these over. So um, overall, I think it's an improvement in sort of visual style. But I think the communication gets lost in the importance of elements because they're all kind of the same size,
Yeah,
and there's
and
nothing really to make them distinct other than some are yellow, some are red, and some are white. But there's not a lot of distinction between those three aspects. Like if you think about the purpose of red on a ship, is it means something is low, or there's danger, or there's too much of it, or something. There's some sort of extreme, and here they're utilizing just notifications essentially, which are if you're in coupled mode, ESP, and I don't know what this landing gear maybe, and these are just
yeah.
red indicators, and so
Well,
it
I
it
I will
struggles a
note
little
that
bit
it
with
says this
communicating.
is the nav QT though, so I don't know if this is part of HUD rework that they're going that's going on right now, or if it's specifically this is the HUD for when you go through a jump gate. That's what I don't know.
So the one for the jump gate that I saw has a little bit different information on the screen. It's missing this sort of target reticle scanning parentheses thing. And it's just this abstract sort of wiggly line that occurs and kind of shows you your alignment. That's what I've seen, but that may only come into play when you're actually aligning for the jump point. And so this is what you see the other 90% of the time.
Right. In nav mode, because that's what it says. It says it's in nav mode. So I don't know.
This might be a good thing for you, but if you notice here on the right side, there is decoy and noise. Maybe they changed it so you can utilize those things while you're in nav mode instead of being utterly defenseless.
Yeah, that might also be nice. I can't also help but notice that there's no visible fuel indicator on whatever this HUD is supposed to be. So that's another knock against it. But in general, I think MFDs should be bright, visible, and not overtly complicated. Like, I'm definitely not going to sit here and say that these look bad. Like, visually they look fine, but there's definitely a lot of depth and stuff that doesn't need to be there, purely based on, like, a functional standpoint, especially if these are things that, well, I know in the Caterpillar it doesn't really make much sense, but, for, like, the Redeemer, the Gladius, pretty much any ship that has any foot in combat, you need to be able to quickly look at your MFDs and know exactly what you're looking for and be able to see information returned to you clearly in a timely manner, at a glance.
And there's allegedly going to be a way to save your MFD setup eventually, right?
Technically, you can save them now. They do persist, as long as the ship isn't blown up. I think when it gets stored, they get reset. They might have adjusted this since the time of me making these claims, so don't quote me on that. But
blame him in the comments if he's wrong.
Yeah, when last I played, you could set the MFDs as what you wanted. Get up out of the seat, get back in, go an entire play session without adjusting them at all, and they'll stay put. But I don't remember if you store the ship and then take it back out if they stay put. But that is something that is in the works, from what I understand.
Yeah, I was kind of referring to them staying persistent short of losing the ship somehow. So if it was lost to space or exploded or whatever, even if you store it, when you get back in, it would be configured the way you configure them.
Yeah, and to my understanding, that's also supposed to extend to ship-specific keybinds, like the weapon grouping as well.
Yeah, that'd be ideal.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get a look at like some of the other MFD work happening here pretty soon, because I'm curious to see the Crusader ones.
One of my biggest gripes with the weapon grouping that with nav mode as it stands is every time you enter nav mode, it resets your weapon grouping. So I don't even bother with it anymore because it just keeps changing.
Yeah, there's so much that just don't bother with anymore because it keeps resetting it. And I've seen it expressed in Spectrum and a few times, probably more than a few times. The like coming out of Quantum, for example, your speed is reset to SCM essentially in nav mode. It doesn't maintain that either, so it's really frustrating to like have to spin up again to accelerate beyond SCM every time you travel. Or switch modes.
It's pretty annoying, but whatever.
All right, well, I think that about wraps it up for this week, right?
Yeah. Unless Alex has anything noteworthy to add.
Like I said, I've been pretty much internet free for the past week.
Internet free, and he's got some kind of foreign disease, I'm sure.
Ice infection.
I mean, you were on that cruise ship. It's a petri dish of weird diseases. You probably should go get checked out.
Probably have like Legionnaire's disease.
Yeah. I'm surprised I let you off the boat.
I got scurvy.
He stepped off the cruise ship full of World War Z zombies.
Hey, listen,
dude, I was just hoping.
Relaxed and fat. Well, fatter.
He'll be night.
Take care.